In Washington, there are 57 types of local governments. Many of them you're familiar with: school districts, fire districts, port districts, mosquito control districts, noxious weed control districts. There are all manner and type of municipal corporations. Few of them have the same authority that cities do, but you're one of those classes of municipal corporations that the state legislature has authorized. There are 181 cities. For reference, 39 counties. The last municipal structure that was created by the legislature was the city transportation program that was the basis for the now defunct Seattle monorail project, when they tried to build the new monorail system in the city and then terminated that activity. That was the 57th type of entity. You have lots of different entities in state government. By the way, the last city to go out of business in the state of Washington was Elberton, for those of you over in southeast Washington. Elberton existed as a town from 1896 to 1966. Elberton was on the North Fork of the Palouse River, and so that was the last disincorporation of a city or town in the state of Washington. As mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about city classifications. You've heard me reference code cities, first-class cities. There's also second-class cities and towns. At one point, there had been a second-class, a third-class, and a fourth-class organization. Legislature, with the stroke of the legislative pen, eliminated all third-class cities and made them second-class cities, and removed the reference to fourth-class city, perhaps thinking that it was demeaning. And now all of those of you who used to be fourth-class cities are now towns. Those are the classifications. And if you, we're not going to be able to talk about all the distinctions today among the various classes of cities. But getting at the top, code cities and first-class cities, as we've mentioned, have what's known as omnibus authority. They can, as a first-class city and a code city, can exercise all authority that any class of city has. So when we think about an issue, can a city do this? What authority does this code city have? We not only look to the first-class city and first-class city or code city statutes, we also look to the second-class city statutes, because there are often provisions in the second-class city laws that aren't found in first or code city statutes. At some point, somebody thought it would be useful to put that in there for a second-class city, and the legislature put it in. Well, code cities and first-class cities can use that same authority. Second-class cities have extensive authority, just not quite as extensive as code cities and first-class cities. When we talk about towns, the most significant distinction between a town form of government and a mayor-council-city form of government is that in a town, the mayor doesn't enjoy veto power. So that's a significant difference in the way that the government operates in a town. The rest, in a mayor-council form of government, as we'll talk about in a minute, the mayor is actually part of the legislative program as a result of his or her ability to exercise veto. How do you work as a legislative authority, as a city council? Most of the time, you will act by motion. Very simple, straightforward. I move to approve a contract with ABC Construction Company to rebuild Main Street as publicly bid and awarded on such and such a date. Second, discussion passed. Contract's approved. There's not much you have to worry about in those kinds of things. The actions reflected in the minute book of the city. That's the official record of what you did and what you approved as a council by motion. Sometimes you get more formal and you adopt a resolution. But note, a resolution is nothing more than a written motion. And whereas this council does believe this and whereas the council does believe that, now therefore we're going to do such and such, or we authorize such activity, or recognize the good service of someone. A resolution is not enforceable. You put somebody in jail for violating a resolution. In order for you to exercise your police power, you have to adopt an ordinance. And it's the ordinance that has the enforcement authority of the city behind it. Now, not all ordinances are police power regulations. Obviously, when you adopt the traffic code, set speed limits, when you decide that there shouldn't be skateboarding on these kinds of sidewalks or streets of the city, you're exercising your police power and you're regulating the conduct of the community through that activity, through that ordinance that you've adopted. And you can send someone to jail for violating your ordinances for up to a year and subject them to a fine of $5,000 for every violation. Most of your communities, that is a seldom seen activity when you're using your police power to other than criminal enforcement. But remember, your police power is not just extending to criminal law type regulation, prevention of trespass or breaking and entering or any of the other kinds of crimes that you can think of, but also how you regulate your community. Fences can be no more than 6 feet high, or side yard setbacks must be at least 10 feet to protect the fire separation among occupancies. Those are police power regulations, but if you want to enforce them, then you must do so by ordinance. And as we mentioned, the mayor in a mayor-council form of government, a city mayor-council form of government, is a part of the legislative authority as a result of the mayor's veto power. And if you want to supersede that veto, then you're going to need a supermajority of the council to overcome that veto and make it the law of your community, whether you mayor likes it or not. The reason that we talk about this in somewhat precise terms is because some of you don't get along between mayor and council. We understand that from time to time. If you as a council act by motion in a mayor-council form of government, the mayor doesn't necessarily have to follow what you are saying, because your resolution may be an expression of intent of the council, but not necessarily the mayor's intent. And the only way that you could compel the mayor to act in a dispute, significant dispute, is by an ordinance passed over his veto. Let me give you an example. So you as a council want to pay the firefighters 6% increase in pay, and the mayor says we can't afford it, we shouldn't do it more than 3%, or whatever the dispute happens to be. You say, well, heck with you, Mayor, we pass a motion to approve a collective bargaining agreement with the firefighters with a 6% pay increase. That's not binding on the mayor. The mayor doesn't have to sign the collective bargaining agreement in that situation, but you could do that if you passed an ordinance approving that contract over the mayor's veto. I hope that you don't find yourself in that kind of situation where you as a council and mayor cannot work collaboratively to come up with a common objective and solution for the benefit of the community. Remembering that you are serving for the benefit of the community, and hopefully you'll find solutions when the mayor and the council do disagree. But there are times when there is disagreement, and as a council, your only authority with respect to compelling the mayor to act is through the enactment of a lawful ordinance, the law of the city. Okay, we'll probably take some questions about that from some of those in the audience, but just to remind you that, again, the actions of the legislative authority are motion and resolution, which is the most common because most of the time the mayor is going to agree with you, or an ordinance, which is the law, and the mayor has part of the legislative authority when adopting an ordinance.